Margaret had just turned 68. She lived alone in a quiet house at the edge of a peaceful town. Her days were simple, reading books, watering her plants, and sipping tea near her window. But her nights were not so easy. For the last few months, something strange kept happening. No matter what time she went to bed, she would always wake up around 3 a.m. and stay awake. At first, she thought it was just age. Maybe older people didn't sleep as deeply, she told herself. But soon, it started to bother her. Each night, the same routine. Eyes wide open, heart slightly racing, her mind filled with thoughts. She would lie still, trying hard to return to sleep, but the harder she tried, the more alert she felt. One night, she stared at the red glow of her bedside clock. It blinked exactly 3:14 a.m. She sighed. Her room was silent, except for the faint ticking of a wall clock. Margaret didn't feel afraid, just frustrated and confused. Why was her body waking her at this same hour every night? She spoke to her daughter, Rachel, about it. Rachel worked in healthcare and knew a bit about sleep patterns. "Maybe your body is trying to tell you something," Rachel said gently. "It's not always random." That idea stuck with Margaret. Could her body really be giving her a message? The next night, when she woke again at 3:12 a.m., she decided not to panic. Instead of staying in bed and fighting sleep, she sat up slowly. She listened to the quiet. She paid attention to how she felt. Her mouth was dry. Her legs felt heavy. And deep inside, something didn't feel right. Like her mind wasn't finished with the day. It wasn't pain, but more like a soft weight in her chest. Something emotional. Something unspoken. Margaret realized she hadn't been talking much about how she felt lately. She missed her husband, who had passed away years ago. She missed her friends, many of whom had moved or grown ill. Maybe her loneliness was deeper than she admitted. And maybe her body was waking her up so she'd finally listen. That night, she tried something new. She got up, made a cup of warm water, and sat by the window. She didn't turn on the lights or scroll through her phone. She just sat in the quiet and breathed slowly. Then she picked up a pen and notebook from her kitchen table and began to write. Nothing big, just small thoughts. "I miss my old walks with Jack," she wrote. "I feel restless. I wish I had someone to talk to tonight." The words were simple, but they helped. She didn't even realize how tense her shoulders had been until she felt them relax. After a few minutes, she returned to bed. This time, she didn't beg her brain to sleep. She just let herself rest. And slowly, softly, she drifted off. It wasn't a perfect night, but for the first time in weeks, Margaret felt a bit of peace. Over the next few days, she made a few small changes. She started keeping warm water beside her bed. She bought a new pillow that gave her neck better support. She also added a soft night lamp instead of harsh ceiling lights. But most of all, she began a nightly habit of checking in with her feelings before sleeping. Each evening, she would write one page in her notebook about her day, her thoughts, or memory she cherished. The act of writing helped her clear her mind before bed. Her sleep didn't become perfect overnight, but the 3 a.m. wake-ups slowly became less stressful. Margaret learned that waking up during the early morning hours wasn't always a curse. Sometimes it was a quiet invitation to listen, to breathe, to reflect. By the end of the month, she felt more in control. She was still waking up some nights, but she no longer felt helpless. Her small nighttime rituals gave her comfort, and her mind stopped racing as much. Instead of fearing the night, she began to greet it with calm. One evening, as the sun set outside her window, Margaret smiled to herself. Maybe this age is not about sleeping through the night, she thought. Maybe it's about waking up to what truly matters. And that thought, gentle and true, helped her rest better than she had in years. A few days after Margaret began writing in her notebook at night, she noticed something else. Every time she woke up around 3 a.m., her mouth felt dry. It wasn't just a little dryness. It felt like she hadn't had water in hours. Her tongue stuck to the roof of her mouth. Her throat felt tight. At first, she ignored it, but night after night, the same thing happened. One evening, after brushing her teeth, she looked at the half-empty glass of water on her nightstand and thought, "Maybe I should drink some now." She sipped a little before bed, thinking it might help. It didn't stop her from waking up, but when she did open her eyes at 3:09 a.m., the dryness in her mouth was worse than ever. This time she sat up and drank the rest of the water slowly, and for the first time she noticed a change. Her body relaxed just a little. Her legs, which often felt jumpy or tense at night, felt softer. Her breathing became easier. She wasn't suddenly sleepy, but she wasn't as restless either. The next day, Margaret asked herself, "Am I drinking enough water during the day?" She realized she wasn't. She had always been a coffee and tea lover. Water wasn't her first choice. She thought drinking tea counted, but it wasn't the same. Her daughter Rachel had once told her, "Mom, your body needs clean water, not just hot drinks." Margaret began to pay attention. She placed a small bottle of water on her nightstand each night, not cold, just room temperature. Cold water, she noticed, made her stomach uncomfortable and woke her up even more. But when she sipped warm or room temperature water, it felt like comfort, like her body was saying, "Thank you. That's what I needed." One night, after another, early wake-up, she drank water slowly and returned to bed. But something still didn't feel right. Her mouth was no longer dry, but her legs kept twitching. She remembered reading something in a magazine about minerals, how your body loses not only water at night but also things like magnesium and potassium. Could she be missing something more? The next morning, she went to the market and bought a small packet of Himalayan pink salt. It was something Rachel had mentioned once. "Just a pinch in water helps," she'd said. That night, Margaret added a tiny pinch of the pink salt to her water. It didn't taste salty. It was barely noticeable, but it made a difference. Her body felt more balanced. Her legs were quiet. Her sleep was not perfect, but it was smoother. Over time, Margaret turned this into a gentle habit. Each evening, she prepared her small water bottle with either a pinch of sea salt or a splash of lemon juice. Sometimes she used both. It was a small act of care, but it felt meaningful. It wasn't just about drinking water. It was about giving her body what it truly needed. She realized her body had been trying to speak for a long time. Waking up in the middle of the night wasn't a punishment. It was a message. Her system was running low, on water, on minerals, on attention. And now, she was finally listening. One morning, after a good night's sleep, Margaret looked in the mirror. She still had wrinkles. She still had silver hair. But her eyes looked brighter. Her skin felt less tight. She felt more awake, more alive. Hydration, she learned, was more than just a task. It was kindness to herself, something she had forgotten in her busy years of caring for others, her husband, her kids, her neighbors. Now, it was time to care for herself. And so, every evening she followed her simple ritual. Warm water, a pinch of salt, a moment of stillness, then bed. Some nights she still woke up, but she no longer felt lost or frustrated. She would sip her water, stretch her feet gently, and breathe. Most times, that was all it took to return to sleep. Margaret's journey wasn't about magic pills or perfect routines. It was about noticing what her body needed: water, rest, and care, and responding with love. And in doing so, she found a softness in her nights, a peace in her early hours. In a world full of noise and advice, Margaret discovered that sometimes the smallest changes make the biggest difference. Margaret had changed her sleep habits. She was drinking more water. She had added a pinch of salt or lemon to keep her body balanced. She even wrote in her notebook before bedtime. Yet, some nights her eyes would still open at 3:00 a.m. Not because of thirst or discomfort, but something else. She couldn't explain it at first. Her body didn't feel dry. Her legs didn't twitch. Her room was quiet and comfortable. But deep inside, something felt heavy, like her heart was full of words she hadn't said, something unspoken, something hidden. That morning, after waking, up again at 3:08 a.m. and sitting quietly by the window, she thought back to the past few months. A memory came to her. The anniversary of her husband's passing had come and gone, and she had said nothing. No phone calls, no mention to Rachel. Not even a silent prayer. She had pushed the day aside, pretending it didn't matter. But maybe it did. Margaret began to understand. Her body was fine, but her emotions weren't. Her heart still carried sadness. Grief didn't follow a schedule. It didn't show up at 10 a.m. when the sun was shining. It crept in during the silence, during the still hours when the world was asleep. Between 3 and 5 a.m., her emotions had space to breathe, and they did. She remembered how she used to talk to her husband late at night, how he would make tea for her when she couldn't sleep, how they would sit quietly, just listening to the wind outside. Now, she was alone, and that silence was loud. That night, instead of forcing sleep or drinking water, she did something else. She sat up, took her notebook, and wrote one line. "I miss you." That was all it took. Tears came to her eyes, not in pain, but in relief. She wasn't weak. She wasn't broken. She was just holding on to feelings that needed to come out. Waking up wasn't the problem. Hiding emotions was. The next day, she read about how stress, sadness, or even unspoken thoughts can wake people during the night. When the body rests, the mind begins to process emotions. If feelings are too big to carry during the day, they return at night, asking to be felt. Margaret thought about this deeply. She began checking in with herself, not just her body, but her heart. Before bedtime, she started asking one question. How do I really feel tonight? Sometimes she answered with joy. I felt proud today. Sometimes it was quiet pain. I felt lonely in the afternoon. She didn't try to fix everything. She just listened. Soon, she added another habit. On nights when she woke up and felt a tightness in her chest, she placed her hand over her heart and whispered, I hear you. It sounded simple, almost silly, but it brought her peace. She was no longer ignoring herself. Rachel noticed the change in her mother. You seem lighter, she said one weekend. Margaret smiled. I'm just learning to be honest with myself, she replied. Margaret also remembered how, years ago, she used to cry and feel ashamed of it. But now, she saw it differently. Crying was not weakness. It was release. Her emotions were like waves. They came and went. And by feeling them, she was letting them pass instead of building up inside. She told herself, there's nothing wrong with waking up when the heart needs space. One cloudy night after a long call with an old friend, Margaret felt unusually peaceful. That night she didn't wake up. Her sleep was soft, deep, and kind, and when she opened her eyes in the morning light, she smiled. It wasn't about never waking up again at 3 a.m. It was about not fearing it. She had learned something powerful. Her emotions were not enemies. They were messengers. And when she listened, they no longer had to shout. So now, when her eyes opened at that early hour, she didn't panic. She simply breathed. She listened to her heart, and she whispered back, I'm here. Margaret had come a long way. She had learned to hydrate smartly, to listen to her emotions, and to calm her thoughts in the middle of the night. But there was still one thing she hadn't figured out. Some nights, even when she felt peaceful, her body didn't rest. She would lie in bed, eyes open, and feel a strange buzzing inside her limbs. Her legs would twitch. Her back felt tight. Her neck ached. It was like her body wanted something. But she didn't know what. She tried staying still. She thought maybe if she didn't move at all, she'd fall asleep. But the more she forced stillness, the more restless she felt. One night she stared at the ceiling, her muscles tense, her toes curled. The clock read 3:47 a.m. again. She sighed and whispered, "Why does my body feel like it's holding a secret?" Then she remembered something she had once read in a book. Sometimes your body holds the stress that your mind can't handle. That line stayed with her, so instead of lying there again, she slowly sat up in bed. No rush, no heavy movements, just a calm shift. She placed a pillow behind her back and took a deep breath. Her shoulders were tight. Her neck was stiff. So she gently rolled her head from side to side, letting her chin fall softly to her chest, then back up again. The stretch felt good, like warm tea for her muscles. Then she raised her shoulders slowly toward her ears, held the tension for a moment, and dropped them. The release felt like taking off a heavy jacket she didn't know she was wearing. After that, she sat on the edge of her bed. She didn't try to do anything fancy. She simply bent forward a little, letting her arms hang toward her knees. Her back let out a quiet sigh of relief. A small stretch, but it felt like a message to her body. It's okay to relax now. Margaret wasn't doing yoga. She wasn't exercising. She was just moving slowly and with care. That was all her body needed. A gentle reset, not a full routine. She lifted one foot off the floor and gave it a little shake, then the other. Her legs stopped feeling so tight. Her toes softened. She rubbed her hands together to create warmth, then placed them on her knees. Her body felt awake, but in a calm way, not jittery like before. That night, after those small movements, she returned to bed and closed her eyes. Her body felt like it had let go of something heavy. And not long after, she drifted off. From that night on, Margaret added movement to her early morning routine. She didn't always need it, but when her body felt stuck, she didn't fight it anymore. She moved gently, and it helped. She learned that the body sometimes holds emotions, stress, and even memories. And if it doesn't get the chance to release them during the day, it may try during the night. So she started paying attention. After a long, emotional day, she didn't just prepare her mind for rest. She also prepared her body. A few shoulder rolls, a light stretch, a warm rub for her hands and feet. Simple acts that reminded her body it was safe, it was heard, and it could rest now. Her sleep began to improve again. Not because she stopped waking up, sometimes she still did, but because she had new tools. She no longer felt like a prisoner of her bed. She had choices, and those choices gave her power. Rachel noticed the change, too. One morning, while having tea with her mother, she asked, "Mom, you look stronger. What changed?" Margaret smiled. "I started listening to what my body was asking for," she replied. "Sometimes it just wants a little movement, a little care." It sounded simple, but to Margaret, it was life-changing. Now, when the clock struck 3 a.m., she didn't panic. She sat up, moved slowly, and gave her body what it needed. And most of the time, that was all it took. In the quiet hours of the night, Margaret found a secret strength, not in sleep itself, but in the way she gently helped her body return to it. Margaret had changed many things in her night routine. She no longer panicked when she woke up. She drank the right kind of water, stretched gently, and listened to her emotions. Yet, some nights, even after doing everything right, she still lay awake. Not because of her body, but because of her mind. It was like her brain refused to be quiet. Thoughts jumped from one to another. Old memories, future worries, and random questions all filled her head. One night she even found herself thinking about a letter she never sent 20 years ago. Another night she kept remembering a phone call she had forgotten to return. The house was silent. The clock ticked softly, but her mind was loud. She whispered to herself, Why is it so noisy in here? Margaret didn't want to reach for her phone. She knew that scrolling through messages or videos would only make things worse. The blue light would wake her up more, and her thoughts would become even faster. She needed a better way. Something gentle. Something calming. She remembered her granddaughter once talked about pink noise. Margaret wasn't sure what it was, but she was curious. The next day, she asked Rachel, "Do you know anything about sleep sounds?" Rachel smiled. "Yes, Mom. Pink noise helps. It's softer than white noise. Think of rain or wind through trees. It helps the brain calm down." That evening, Margaret searched for pink noise online. She found a short video that played gentle rain. No ads, no voices, just soft, steady sound, like tiny raindrops on a roof. She played it on low volume and placed her small speaker on the table beside her bed. That night, when she woke at 3:10 a.m., she didn't stress. She took a sip of her water, rolled her neck, then pressed play on the sound. The soft rhythm filled her room, like nature itself was whispering a lullaby. At first, she listened carefully. Then, slowly, her thoughts faded. The rain didn't talk. It didn't ask questions. It didn't remind her of things undone. It just flowed. Margaret closed her eyes. Her body softened. Her breathing slowed. Before she knew it, she had fallen asleep again. The next morning, she felt rested. Not because she never woke up, but because her night had ended in peace. From that day on, pink noise became her nighttime friend. Sometimes she chose ocean waves. Other nights, soft wind or river sounds. It didn't matter which one. It just had to be slow, steady, and quiet. But there were still some nights when thoughts were too strong. On those nights, she tried something new, a sleep meditation. She found a short one online, only 8 minutes long. The speaker's voice was calm and slow. He guided her to breathe deeply and relax each part of her body, starting from her toes, moving up to her knees, then her stomach, chest, shoulders, and finally her face. Margaret followed the voice like a traveler walking a gentle path. She didn't need to think. She didn't need to try. She just followed along. And that helped her return to rest. The best part was how simple it all was. She didn't need any special tools, just a calm sound, just a soft voice, just kindness to her overthinking brain. She also learned something important. Silence is not always peaceful. Sometimes the mind fills silence with noise, and sound, gentle, healing sound, can help take the mind away from that noise. Margaret's nights became softer. Not perfect, but easier. She no longer feared waking up at 3:00 a.m. She had tools now, and sound was one of her favorites. She smiled more during the day. Her thoughts were lighter. Even her neighbor commented, "You look like you found a secret." Margaret chuckled. "I just stopped fighting the night," she replied, "and started listening instead." Sometimes the answers we need aren't in silence, but in soft sounds that guide us back to ourselves. In the end, Margaret didn't need to fix everything. She just needed to support her body and mind gently. A few deep breaths, a glass of warm water, a quiet stretch, a soothing sound. That was all it took to find peace again. And every night, as the rain played softly beside her, Margaret remembered something beautiful. Rest isn't something you chase. It's something you invite. With patience, with care, and with love.